Suddenly, I was in this tunnel. I looked up and I saw this light.
On March 13, 1982, 7-year-old Kristle Merzlock attended a birthday party at a YMCA in Pocatello, Idaho. She never suspected that her life was about to change forever and that she would become the first medically studied case of children's near-death experience.
I wanted to test my skills in the water, and because I just learned how to swim at school. So I got out of the pool, walked down to the side of the pool, and at the end of the pool, I guess the pool was really overcrowded that day or something. I got pushed into the water by some boys that were kind of fighting. They were pushing each other around at the end of the pool, and just was scared and started to swallow water and drown.
I can't remember hitting the water, but I can remember going down. And I panicked. I couldn't breathe, but I remember trying to reach up and get to the top of the water, and I couldn't. From right there, I fell unconscious and everything went black.
When Kristle drowned, they called me. Seattle Children's Hospital had a satellite clinic in Pocatello, Idaho. I was there learning from, working with the other physicians. So anyway, they called me in, and I went into the hospital there and ran the resuscitation, because none of them, resuscitate children.
I just remember going into this sense of, darkness, and I heard some noises that really kind of scared me. And I still can't describe them to this day. I'm not sure what they were. And then I was in this tunnel, and I looked up, and there was a bright light at the end of this tunnel that I was sitting in. And I noticed that on the walls there were brightly colored bricks. It was like they were clear with bright lights shining through them of different colors. And I knew that I wanted to get to this light because it radiated love. It wanted, it was pulling me toward it, basically. And
Suddenly, I was in this tunnel, and it had bright colored bricks on the sides. I looked up and I saw this light. I got really curious, so I started crawling to see what it was. And suddenly I saw the image of a woman. She said, "My name is Elizabeth. I'm your guardian angel, and I'm here to help you." And from right then, she led me up into the light and on into what I believe is heaven.
When I was led into the light by Elizabeth, I was led into what I call heaven. And I just looked around and saw this, this amazing, beautiful, big, huge meadow with luscious trees and plants and different people milling around. They were all dressed in white, robe types of things. And it just radiated a whole bunch of love. And it was wonderful to me, but it felt like home. It didn't feel unusual. It felt like home. And I was greeted by aunts and uncles and some of their friends. One grandmother and I didn't ever remember meeting her before. I was greeted by my Aunt Pat, who had died a few months earlier, and by Grandpa Paul, and he had a friend with him named George that I don't remember meeting before. And they were just very glad I was there. Elizabeth was there through the entire thing, just right there with me. And I don't remember all the sequence of events, that happened and as they happened. But I did get a chance to look down on my body, and that's when I saw Dr. Morse and what they were doing in the emergency room.
She had the most profound stage of coma, and very few children or adults survive that kind of thing. You know, she was having a hard time breathing. Her body basically was shutting down. So I was so puzzled as to what to do. I called the doctors up at Seattle Children's Hospital, and I described to them her condition of completely shutting down. And I said to them, so what do you recommend I do next? And Kristle heard that, and she described that to me. That was one of the things that really made me, believe her, because there's no way she would have been able to hear me saying that.
I knew that, but I was still attached to my body. I didn't want to leave my body. I didn't like what I saw. I saw them putting different tubes, in down my throat and up my arm, and I saw some blood, and I didn't like it. And so I looked away. I didn't like what they were doing to my body. So with that just in mind, I don't know that I felt like I didn't feel not normal. I felt normal. It felt like everything was the way it was supposed to be when I was in heaven. Yes, I met two other girls. They were about my age, about 7 years old. Yeah, and their names were Heather and Melissa, and they were, if I were to put them at about an age, it would be the same age that I was at 7 years old. And I saw them as my playmates in heaven. Because we just, I don't know that we did anything too noteworthy except, playing. But at one point they said they were going to be born soon. I woke up in primary children's, and I still don't remember from the time that I had my drowning experience to the time that I went home from the hospital was 7 days. I was only 4%, functioning on my own. They had prescribed all these different doctors, specialists to come see me, tried to help me. Only one came. And he didn't know why that they had him come, because I was talking. Like one day I wouldn't be able to feed myself, the next day I would. One day I wasn't talking, or I didn't know how to make sense of my words, and the next day I'd just be a chatterbox. Then being directed. So my mom, right after I had this experience, she had a dream, and in that dream she says, okay, I was told that I need to listen to Kristle. I need to listen to what she has to say, because when I was, she kept me home for a couple of weeks from school, after I got out of the hospital and back, because she was worried about me catching something and just being vulnerable, I guess, for other illnesses that spread around schools. And she said I would tiptoe around the house and kind of make little noises and say it was so hard to walk. And she would think, what are you talking about? And and wonder what noises that I would make. And then I would say something about a Heather or say something about a Melissa. And that kind of got her thinking, because when I was, I don't know if I was still in a coma or if I was just really just still out of the coma, but very sedated. At one point, the nurse came and got my mom and said she's calling for her mother. And when my mom came in, she listened to me and she said, no, she's calling for Heather. I don't know who Heather is. About a week after I got home, she took me to go see Dr. Morse. And he said, oh, Kristle, you don't know me, but I do know you, and that kind of thing. And I looked at him and I stepped back to my mom and said, no, Mom, I know him. He was putting things in my wrists and down my mouth, and I scowled at him and didn't want to be with him. And and then he is the one who asked me, what was this experience like for you? not meaning, not asking anything about, near death. And I told him heaven was fun.
Well, no, she went to see her doctor. And I was working in that clinic. I don't think I was with him that day. But, these are, fairly small clinics. So I saw Kristle in the hallway. And I just, I was like, hi, Kristle, you probably don't remember me, but I sure remember you. And, and that's when she turns to her mom and she says, oh, no, I remember him. He's the one that put a tube in my nose.
I simply said to her, tell me what you remember about the time you were in the swimming pool. And she said to me, oh, do you mean when I saw the Heavenly Father? I said, well, that wasn't exactly what I had in mind, but I certainly wanted to hear more about that.
I did get the chance to meet Christ and Heavenly Father. And Christ held me on his lap and just kind of loved me as he would a little, any other child. And, gave me, it's hard to, I don't know, after all these years, you think it'd be easier to describe, but it's not. Sometimes he just kind of held me and loved me. And him and Heavenly Father asked me if I wanted to stay in heaven or if I wanted to go back to my family and on earth. And I thought, no, I want to stay here. This is perfect. Why would I ever want to leave? And then I remembered, I thought, oh no, I need to go be with my mom. I can't leave my mom. I can't, it's so funny that I have this eternal perspective all this time. And then right at that minute, I don't have that eternal perspective. And, I needed to be with my mom, and they said, okay, so you need to make sure and obey your parents before you come back. You won't automatically, be allowed into heaven like you were this time. And, follow what your parents say and what your leaders say. Be a good person. I don't know. I don't remember what their exact words were, but there was direction as to what I needed to do to make it back to heaven. So it was Dr. Morse that started it out, but then my mom sat me down and said, okay, Kristle. I started to talk to her about what had truly happened.
For a child to come up and say, I've had a near-death experience, is to me extraordinary, and I feel they are credible witnesses. At least they can tell us what happened to them.
I just remember those days right then, going in and having fun and talking to this doctor, and we drew pictures, and he would just ask me different things to make sure I was okay, but he was trying to figure out what I was going through and what had happened to me. Okay. He asked me one time to draw what it felt like to be dead, and I didn't know what he meant. And so I just drew a coffin that was really far in the ground. And
okay.
Yeah.
You didn't realize that he was talking about your experience.
No, because I didn't feel dead.
There was no descriptions of near-death experiences in children, so that's why I wanted to publish that, to alert people have these experiences as well. I think if I knew what a near-death experience was, or if people had talked to me about it at that point in my life, I think I was a true skeptic. So it's just, we knew nothing about it. We knew absolutely nothing about it.
Experts say that no matter what age, we all follow the same steps between life and death. My first guest is an all-American teenager, but when she nearly drowned, her life was altered. Kristle Merzlock claims to have seen heaven.
Near-death experiences to me were something that you would see in a supermarket tabloid, but not worthy of scientific research.
What changed your view? Was it just the constant stream of cases you found?
No, it was really meeting Kristle Merzlock changed my whole opinion about near-death experiences.
It was totally darkness, and then I looked up, and it was a tunnel. The only time that I really remember thinking about it was when I had a chance to look down on my body on the operating table, and I saw the doctors putting tubes up my nose to help me breathe and down my throat and in my arms, and I didn't like it, so I just looked away.
I was watching your YouTube videos, and you were a star when you were a kid, because you were like on 3 different TV shows. People talked about you. You were in a book. You were in a scientific paper. You were everywhere, So that is amazing, because you were the first NDE child NDE that was famous.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that having had Dr. Melvin Morse attend you made you integrate this experience and understand this experience better than many kids do. Normally kids, they if you would not have had a medical doctor helping you understand what happened, you could have ended up thinking it was a dream or something.
Yeah. And I had a medical doctor who didn't believe me, but he didn't tell me that.
Who was that?
Dr. Morris.
Oh, he did not believe you in the beginning.
No, he did not believe anything. He was out to, he was so fun and so loving and so everything. I had no idea. My parents had an idea, but he was out to prove that near-death experiences were wrong. And in the process, you will hear him talk about this other places, but he proved himself wrong.
Wow, yes. He mentioned that he was more or less like a skeptic, and that he wanted to prove that the origin of NDEs were physical, biochemistry, created by biochemistry, and the studies prove otherwise.
I called up Bruce Grayson and I told him about the Kristle's experience. And then, he's already done a number of studies, and he was my mentor because I didn't know anything about near-death experiences. And Jerry Milstein didn't know anything, and Don Tyler, nobody at our hospital had ever heard a near-death experience. And the psychiatrist that I was referring to, he's really a nationally known child psychiatrist, or was, he's probably passed by now. But he said, well, if these near-death experiences are real, and children really have them, why didn't I hear about them? Because everybody tells me everything. So it's just, we knew nothing about it. We knew absolutely nothing about it.
Have you felt a special connection with Jesus and with Heavenly Father all these years? Have you kept like a spiritual relationship with them within the normal limits?
I have, and I don't think it's anything outside normal limits. I don't see people. I don't I don't communicate with, besides through like a regular prayer, through with any kind of higher powers. I don't see people that are not living or feel them. When I went into college, I wanted to be there with friends because that's where my friends were going. And so I started just taking normal generals, but I got into social work stuff and I just automatically just went to the next and the next and the next and the next classes. At first not expecting that I was even going to get a degree in social work. And
so did you get a degree?
I have a master's degree, yes.
Wow.
I'm mastered in clinical social work. And so now I'm a clinical therapist.
So do you think your NDE had something to do with your decision or somehow affected you? Or how do you think it affected you?
I think it affected everything. I mean, I was so young. I mean, I really think it directed everything in my life.
You're trained medically, right? How do you buy all this? How do you explain it to yourself with your own training?
It's very difficult to explain from a medical standpoint. Remember, when patients lapse into coma, that should wipe clean the slate of consciousness.
Correct.
Comatose patients should not be dreaming, should not be having hallucinations. In Kristle Merzlock's case, her pupils were fixed and dilated, meaning, that what I was always trained was that there was no brain activity, and yet she could accurately describe everything I was doing to her.
One of the great things that I love about life is a lot of times we do things for our own self-interest, and yet can have a great benefit. A lot of times, we think we're doing it, for our own reasons. And my reason was this was never described, and I wanted to publish it in the literature.
You had this huge opportunity of being the first.
Exactly.
And this opportunity still exists because near-death experience is still like a wild territory that has not been fully described. Right. And there are many things that can be, many theories that can be produced or created.
So we wrote 3 papers, well, actually 4 papers. And, people still download them today. So we were right. I wouldn't say we looked at it so much as, are these experiences real or not? We looked at it more like, wow, this is a great opportunity. But we took we did a very considered and thoughtful study. So I'm always hearing all this bullshit about, oh, they're just dreams. Well, I have a wide variety of dreams. How come, this is a dream that'll happen to us all when we die. And whether you want to call it a dream or not, that's just philosophy. We didn't ask that question, so we weren't really believers or non-believers. My only question was, does this happen at the point of death as these children say it did? Or is it any one of the other reasons? To answer that question, we had to just ask them the blandest of questions. What do you first remember? What do you remember at home? How'd you get to the hospital? What do you remember about that? And they all said the same thing.